Hello everyone, we're now live and I'm going to be taking you through 5 ways to change your perspective. I'm just going to wait as no one's joined us yet. As ever, if you have any comments, please put them down below. Hey Vijaya, it's good to see you here. So today we're looking at 5 different ways to change your perspective. Just to go back, the first week we had Paul who took us through a matter of perspective. And on week 2 we had Adele who took us through changing our past perspectives. So today I'm going to focus on how we can change our perspective in the moment. So as you know, we all face various forms of drama every day, and it isn't easy to change your perspective in that moment. Maybe you've all faced a situation where somebody might have upset you, things aren't going as planned. What's for dinner? That's a big one, especially in my family. Why don't people communicate clearly? I've got a flat tire on my way to work, and sometimes that happens all at once. And there's a favourite character of mine, Captain Jack Sparrow, that said, the problem is not the problem. The problem is not the problem. Your attitude to the problem can sometimes be the problem. So if you have any comments or questions, please put those down below. Hello, Shannon. It's nice to see you here. So these are just a few tips I'm sharing today on how to change your perspective when you feel caught up in daily drama. Sorry, we'll go to the first one, which is distance yourself from negativity. So have you ever noticed that it's often easier to focus on the negative than find the positive? When you're in a state of high emotion, logic can go out of the window. This can push you down a spiral of negative thoughts. If the people you spend the most time with tend to linger in negativity, it is going to be nearly impossible for you to escape being pulled out of that same pool of negativity. Managing the negativity you allow into your life isn't just a matter of the people around you. Think about the type of content you are consuming and the messages that you're allowing to subconsciously program your mind every day. So if we think about when we're scrolling through Facebook, we're seeing negative things on people's timelines that they may have shared. We're consuming the news every day, which is very negative. We're trying to stay in those positive places with positive people can really have a big impact. So I'm going to come to some of the comments. Vijay saying, very true. The first thing we think and hear is objection when faced with any situation. I totally agree with that. So if you're just joining us, we're going through 5 ways to change your perspective. And as ever, if you have any comments or questions, please do put them in the comments box. So we've just looked at distance yourself from negativity and surround yourself with positive people. So I'll go on to our next tip, which is change your perspective by changing your inputs. So what we mean by that is, in order to change your perspective, you need to change your emotional and mental inputs. Find sources of positive influence, such as books, blogs, and spiritual leaders. Don't rely solely on sources of information that focus on undesirable things happening in our world. You know, you've got the Coaching Minds podcasts and news feeds dedicated to sharing positive news. And I know Karen's got the Good News channel. Have I got good news for you? You can even influence what comes across your social media feed by choosing not to interact with people whose news feeds are littered with negativity. So because of Facebook's algorithm, the more you interact with a person, the more you see of them. So try to not interact with that person as much and interact more with the people that you want to see. So let's go back to the comments. Hello, Paula. It's great to see you here. Shannon saying, many times my early thoughts are, I don't want to do that. But once I get out of my way, I feel great to accomplish my tasks. So we're going to come on to a tip later on, Shannon. That would be really beneficial for accomplishing tasks and changing your perspective on it. Adele Jacobs is here saying hello everyone, and Paula Adams is here saying good morning everyone. So I'm just going to go back for those that have just joined us to the first tip, which is distancing yourself from negativity. So that means surrounding yourself with positive people, surrounding yourself with positive influential things. Like you could use the Coaching Minds podcasts, our lives, just stay around things that are really, really positive. We've got Andini joining us. Hello, Andini. It's nice to see you here. That's great, Shannon. She says she has a great small support circle who I can trust. So if you have any comments, please put them down below. Then we've just looked at change your perspective by changing your inputs. And that is changing your inputs. And your inputs are what you see around you every day. So news can be a source of negative input. And I've just shared a tip on Facebook. The more you interact with somebody, the more you see of them on your news feed. So if they're always sharing negative things, try not to interact with them and interact with the positive things that you do see. I agree with that, Vijay. The first input is your immediate thoughts on any situation. And we have tips coming up that'll help you with those. Hello, Vina. It's nice to see you joining us today. So we'll go on to our next tip, which is simply managing your expectations. So upset comes from unmet expectations. It's disappointing when we think someone is going to do something and they don't follow through. We cannot control what someone else does. However, we can better manage our own expectations. If someone has revealed himself or herself to be unreliable, but you still expect that person to follow through on something, you haven't set anyone up for the greatest potential outcome. Be sure you are clear in your communication of expectations and avoid making assumptions to reduce drama in your life caused by unmet expectations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I know we covered that in our book club. So Dell is saying, I am very aware of what I share and what I take in. Also, my thoughts is key, and I do agree with that. And we touched upon that in the book club, in that sometimes we share things that are very fearful for others, and we're just being mindful of that. Paula says, I think when we look at the positive and create boundaries without expectation from others, we can create a better environment, and that's so true. There's been times when I've expected something of someone and they didn't do it, and that led my thoughts to being negative, and it was very hard to change that perspective. And I did share a quote from a favourite character of mine, Captain Jack Sparrow, before you all joined, which is, the problem is not the problem. Our attitude about the problem is the problem. Venus saying, be open-minded. So true. Vijay says, the root cause of all disappointments is our expectations. Dynamics and situations change, our expectations remain the same. I'm so glad that you're on board with that, Vijay, because a little over a year ago we did a talk in Wisdom Creators about managing expectations. And the one thing that I really took away from that is, if I didn't expect anything of anyone, then I wouldn't be disappointed when they didn't follow through on that. But you know, sometimes you can expect something to do something, and you know, their situation changes, which means they cannot do that what you've expected anymore, and that's okay too. Adele saying, also be aware of others' habits and traits. We must also be present and not overpromise and under-deliver for others, and I agree with that. I would never, you know, a few years back, I would probably say yes to everything, even if it meant I couldn't do it later down the line, because I'd just taken on so much, and it created such a disappointment for the person who I was trying to help. So I had to learn to say no when I couldn't do something, so that I didn't overpromise that I could do it. Rena says, I listen to what others say and try to create a balance. That's so true. Hello, Bob. It's nice to see you here. For those of you that's just joined, we're going through some tips on how to change our perspective. The first two tips that we did share was distance yourself from negativity, change your perspective by changing your inputs, and now we're just looking at managing expectations. Hello, Priya, nice to see you here. Karen, nice to see you here too. And Venus says expectations are painful at times. Yes, it can be. If we don't manage our own expectations and what we expect of somebody else, it can lead us to have those thoughts that we find difficult to change. So I'll go into our next tip, which is look for the benefit. Sorry. with me technology. I've missed a slide out when I put these together. But the next one is acknowledge when something isn't permanent. So remember, there's a lot in life that we're unable to change. Thankfully, many of the daily dramas that we face are temporary. The terrible traffic you were sitting in earlier, now you aren't. The family member that seems to always find a way to say hurtful things, you can choose to limit your time with that person. The team member creating toxicity in your business can be provided an opportunity to be happy elsewhere. Although you cannot change the behaviors or attitudes of others, you can change your perspective to recognize that the drama does not have to last any longer than you let it. That's one of the things that I looked at and have been reflecting on recently, that I would get these feelings of being nervous before live. I would get feelings of upset when somebody did something, but they were in my control. Paula Adams says, life happens sometimes, so I'm learning to create boundaries, and it's difficult when being low on energy, and that I can understand that, Paula. But just know that it's can only be temporary, and you have the power within to change how you see that. And we're all here with you and sending you lots of support, and you can reach out to us anytime. Venus says creating boundary is what I need to learn, and that I'm still learning, and it's very difficult, because sometimes when I create a boundary, I feel like I'm hurting somebody else, but I hurt them more by not creating that boundary. And yes, Paula, the drama doesn't have to last any longer than you let it. It's all in our perspective, and it's all in our control. Adele's saying, always see the good and positive points in others. That's in your control, not theirs. And that's so true. That's so true. Paula Adams is saying, yes, I know my tribe. So Vijay is saying, acknowledge and accept what is permanent. Death, acknowledge and accept what is temporary. This is really important. I'm learning to tell myself you can handle yourself. And that's so true. So for me, I'm going to share something a little bit personal. But 2 days ago, I had a phone call off my mum to say her dog had passed away. And it was really upsetting, and I allowed myself to feel that emotion. And then after a while, I said to myself, I'm in control of how long I feel like this. And I know feeling like this isn't doing me any favors. So then I had to change my perspective to really focus on all the positives of it. So all the good times that, I'd been around my mum's, and the dog had come up for a cuddle and everything like that. So it's, yeah, I'm in control of how long I feel how I feel. Even though that was a permanent thing, and there's times when there is temporary situations where we may get overwhelmed, but it is only temporary, and we've got the power to how long we live with those feelings. I'm just going to go back to some more comments. Late comment from Bob on the last topic for expectations. We can start with Einstein's quote. The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. That's so true, Bob. So true. That decision is in our control. And there's no right or wrong if we believe we're in a hostile universe or whether we believe we're in a friendly universe. Neither one is wrong and neither one is right. And as Paul discussed, we make our own truth. Karen's saying, so true. If you think about it, a good example also is if you're in the midst of a deep thought, someone can distract you by asking you a question. We can do that to ourselves, and I like that, Karen. Asking the right positive questions to get us out of that thought. Venus says, don't react immediately to a situation, reflect and react when things have calmed down. I like that. I try not to react when my emotion is really high, because that's when I'm not thinking clearly. So when I can, if a situation doesn't need my immediate attention, I can then wait, let things calm down, before I then, reflect on it and decide what action needs to be taken. Shannon says, I have been working on patience in my life. I'm doing so much better and having a plan B, everything and everywhere I go. That's so important as well. To be kind to ourselves and remember that things and situations can change. And we have the power to see the positive in every situation. So just earlier today, I'd asked prayer for something that I didn't know how to do, but luckily for me, she wasn't at her phone at the time, so she couldn't reply straight away. So that led me to go and actually research how to do it myself. So now I know how to do it myself. I just thanked Priya for not actually being at her phone at that particular time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned how to do it myself. So I had the power to see that situation as either positive or negative, and I chose to see it as a positive situation. Adele says boundaries and power of no is most important, not just to yourself but others too, and that's so true. It can be hard to say no, but if you say yes to that person, then they get an expectation, and once that person's got their expectation, we can let them down on that expectation. But then remember that that's in their control, how long they let that feeling stay with them. I'll just find it. 2 seconds. And back to some of the comments. Bob says, believing you can handle a situation is key. I love the quote, you are stronger than you think. That's a really good quote. What seems like little things are huge, and that can be the case. So sometimes a situation is really huge, really overwhelming, but we've got the power as to how we see that situation. And that is a good reminder. We can wait before taking action. Shannon's agreeing with Vina. Reacting had caused me much trouble, so now I take a breath and pray and take a walk to respond with intelligence rather than react. Paula says, when I have more clarity about my health issues, I understand more why I behave the way I do with unexpected feelings, and that's so true. Can we understand that, Paula? Chances I meant about being huge in being huge in a very positive way. and it's a tip further on that we're going to come to that includes that. Priya says it's like holding on to something that no longer serves you. The decision is in our reins, and that's so true. Bob says, I think listening can be key instead of speaking out from an emotional reaction. Just try and be calm and listen intently, then decide if any engagement is necessary or desirable. So we're going to come on to our next tip, which is just what we've been talking about, which is look for the benefit. For me, there's no question that Napoleon Hill can be said as one of the greatest thought leaders of our time. His work was monumental in propelling the self-development industry. A foundational philosophy behind Hill's messages is that every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it a seed of an equal or greater benefit. So, I don't know if you all know Nicholas Cole. He shared how a catastrophic injury at the age of 14 destroyed his childhood and dreams, and from that came new opportunity. It also taught him always look at the positive. It will not necessarily be obvious. You will need to put in the effort into seeking it out. So my question is, how would a change in your perspective create a new opportunity for you? And there's a book actually by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil, which is very useful for helping look for benefits. So just as I shared before about Priya not being at her phone, I could have seen that as really negative, but there was a big benefit in that. Come back to some of the comments. Priya saying proactive or reactive. Shannon's agreeing with you, Priya. She's always asking herself, does this serve me? Thank you, Bob. So yeah, my question is, how would a change in your perspective create new opportunity for you? Straight for you if you want to answer that question. And there's always a benefit to every situation, and we choose whether we want to look for that or not. Karen's saying, yes, Bob, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change by Wayne Dyer. That is so true. Also, I'd really like to know a situation in your lives where you've seen a big benefit from the negative. Paula says, perspective is very important. When I changed my perspective on relationships with people, I began to let them in my life, and that created me being here. That's so wonderful, Paula. So wonderful. Venus says, universe sometimes gives opportunity in a twisted manner. How you take the reins and use for positive benefit is up to you. That's so true as well. There's many times that the universe hasn't gone in my favor, but when I've had time to reflect and looking back on it, it's given me a bigger opportunity and a bigger benefit. Although I've had the what we call growing pains of going through that particular time period, it's had a huge impact and a huge benefit. Adele says reflection on situations and events is important. You always find the positive rather than the negative. If you see the positive or see it from a different view, you see the opportunities more clearly. You do. And it can be hard in the moment to see a different perspective on it. Another thing that really helps me is to talk it over with somebody else. And usually they come with a perspective that really shifts my perspective. But yes, is when it is with respect to people, I remind myself that no relationship is permanent, paths change, and that's so true. That nothing is permanent, nothing lasts forever. Come back to some of the comments. So look, Bob's agreeing with you, Karen. That's one of his favourite quotes of all times. And it's really starting to grow on me as well the more I hear it. Priya says, if I change and continue to grow and adopt to new ways, we are more likely to attract those opportunities. And that is another great thing that you mentioned there, Priya, that if you continue to see things from a different perspective, then you can open yourself up to attract new opportunities and being more accepting of new opportunities when life changes and throws you in a different direction. It can be difficult and it can be hard to change your perspective, but if you look for the benefit, that can greatly help too. So Vijay says, I often think back, what was a really big worry 10 years ago has somehow worked itself out. So in the long run, things do work out. For me, that long run has been about 15 years. And it's true, it takes time. It doesn't come instantly. But we have the power as to whether we let that worry consume us for that amount of time. And it's true that, it's good to feel what you're feeling, but not let it consume us. Paula says, Adele, you are so wise. Do you agree with that? Shannon says, I love to turn what seems like a negative at one moment into finding the positive, such as moving, coming up. I'm doing what I can to get my health in optimal condition, and that's great. That can really help change our perspectives. And I like this. Perspective plus reflection equals opportunities. Adele, we need that on a t-shirt. And I really love that. And then he says, creating opportunities by changing perspective for me with the whole pandemic thing. I look at from what I can do online as we're in lockdown rather than keep focusing on the pandemic and the virus. And that was me at the beginning. Constantly watching the news where all the negative, where it wasn't positive news, it was all negative, doom and gloom. I was scrolling through Facebook and I could see it popping up on everybody's timeline that they were worried, which was causing me to be worried. And I was clinging on to that feeling rather than looking at what good can come from a pandemic. And out of the pandemic came Coaching Minds. And we wouldn't be online, we wouldn't be doing this now if it wasn't for the pandemic. So actually having that time to look back and reflect on it and think, what can we do rather than what we can't do is so important, especially when the situation changes, and you have to change that perspective to what can I do now. Venus says, when I was in my trainee and working for someone, the negative reactions I used to get has molded me to a different kind of architect today. I'm happy they did it now, otherwise I wouldn't have learned. And that's so true. It's never nice when anyone gives you those negative reactions, but it's up to us how we take them and move forward. So we can take a negative reaction and let it consume us, or we can take that negative reaction and say, actually, I'm going to use that to better myself. Priya says, love the Wayne Dyer quote. It really helped me see the positives rather than the negatives. Paul Adams says, Andini, any lessons from you? You really took advantage of the opportunity. Are you for hire? I create and upload more videos during the pandemic and it got me to 100k subscribers. That was crazy, all because I changed my perspective. That's wonderful. That's wonderful that you could change your perspective to think, how you can do that during adversity. And I like this, what Adele's saying is things do not happen on our time, but at the right time. And I found that a lot. Don't know if anybody else has found that, but I think things happen when they need to, and sometimes we're sent trying times, and them trying times help us grow. Paula Adams is already going to buy a t-shirt. You got your first customer, Adele. Priya's saying, like a stream that is always flowing, everything will not work out the first time, and that's why it's essential not to give up, but to keep on testing what's working and what's not. And that's so true. Now, what else we got? Venus says the pandemic was negative, but it brought several positive outcomes. It sure did. Bob says reframing a negative comment helps me change perspective. It helps me think what might be possible if I look at something differently. And Vijay says changing perspective, especially when you are conditioned to think in a certain manner, is a big step. This can be powerful as looking inward and working on one's mental health can be as powerful, and I agree with that. And it's not always easy to change that perspective. There's many a time I've struggled to try and change a perspective, but what else has helped me is looking back at past situations and reflecting. And I know we touched upon that last week with Adele. The more I've looked at past situations and tried to look for that benefit, the more it helps me to realize and recognize the benefits in future situations. So my why started to change as a result. Everything around changed and became more meaningful. That's so beautiful, Vina. So beautiful. And I know we always go normally to an hour, but I'll finish a little bit earlier, so I'm going on to the key takeaway. And I apologize for the photo because I think I was hungry and got the wrong meaning of takeaway when I selected the picture. So the key takeaway that I just want to leave you with. So we say it is. I've done some research that says that it takes up to 6 positive thoughts to counteract one negative thought, because happiness is something found within. By creating a change in your perspective, you can have a profound impact on your own happiness. And that's one thing I remind myself every day, that happiness doesn't come from outside sources. Happiness comes from within. Sometimes outside sources can bring us short bursts of happiness. But for long-term happiness, that comes from within. So if anyone's got any questions, I'll wait and see if we've got any more questions or any more comments. Yeah, it's been great engaging with you today and seeing all your perspectives and sharing just 5 tips that can help. And for anybody that wants them, I will share these slides. Bob saying, agree, Daniel. Things will happen in the right time. Sometimes we're just not ready. This is where continued growth prepares us to be ready to receive what the universe has for us. I like that. Sometimes we're not ready to receive the change, but if we're open to receiving the change, that's when the biggest growth can come. Saying, thanks, Dan, for a wonderful session, and thank you, Vijay, for being here. Venus saying, I just had pizza. That box reminds me of that. Yes, I could just eat some pizza right now. So I just want to thank you all for joining me today. And comment from Adele. What was in the takeaway you had? The evidence is in your slide. I think I had a burger, or it looked like a burger, and just got hungry. Paula says, I think being in the hospital is all leading to a clearer diagnosis. Each time my body is trying to be understood, so I will look at my health in a different way, a positive way, instead of a victim way. I love that, Paula. And I love how you advocate for us to listen to our bodies, because they do tell us when something's wrong. I've been recently starting to listen to my body too, so thank you for that. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next week, where we've got Andini coming live. So thank you, and see you guys all soon.